Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Leadership for the Now. My name is Florin Lungu, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And today, I'm joined by a wonderful friend and a fantastic guest, Tommy Jansson from SiNiX SW Flow. Welcome, Tommy.
Hi, thanks, Florin. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for making the time. So, for someone that doesn't know you and you have not met them before, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yes, my name is Tommy, CEO for SiNiX SW Flow. I'm delighted and thrilled to work with great people. And I think personally, I'm becoming a much better person being surrounded with good persons. So that's one of the ambitions, actually, to grow, but not grow individually only, but grow as teams or the network that you interact with. So that's kind of what I'm longing for, working with great people. And now I have the pleasure to be working with many great people, and I enjoy it a lot. And the background is primarily leadership roles the past 10 plus years, and the background before that from a more personal background is a lot of different sports activities, and I think that's where the ambition to grow team comes from. Actually, I'm not the individual person as such.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you have built a fantastic team there at SiNiX SW Flow. So you obviously work with leadership before. You're a leader right now. You create value for research and development organizations. So tell us a little bit about what you see as being the challenges that leaders face today.
Sure. I will not give too many analysis about the pandemic situation that we faced. I mean, surely there are some new challenges coming up, and there's some bends from it as well, I think, personally. The challenges is to attract and find good people, I think. That's one challenge. Another challenge is to dare to be personal and maybe, to be honest, vulnerable at the same time, being open and transparent on the right level, so to say. That's a couple of challenges for the leaders. Fortunately, I do believe that many leaders have at least realized that it's not about being the greatest. It's about doing people great things or making people great. But that's a challenge to kind of reform or transform yourself if you're on the old-fashioned style, I would say. And another challenge would be as well to not tell people what to do, but more like guide, coach, help them. I think could be a challenge for some as well.
Right. So I love that. So you started with, I think, one of the biggest challenges that I know leaders that I work with and I interview face is about attracting people, attracting talent, right? Because at the end of the day, we cannot grow our businesses more than we can grow our teams, right? So I truly see how that will would be a challenge for many. But also I like that you were talking about being personal and vulnerable with other people, because that's one of the challenges with the pandemic, because we've been apart for so long now. How can you be personal with someone you don't even see in person, right? So I
Yeah.
think now is the time for us to kind of catch up on that and spend time with our people, and obviously not micromanage. So for example, if someone is a leader, hears us, and they say, okay, perfect, I'm going to take these three things in, I'm going to work on those, what opportunities then will be available for them if they do the things that we know are important, as leaders?
Um, I might see that from two perspectives. If I did get you right, Florin, help me out otherwise. But I mean, it's not about specific awards or rewards every time. I mean, it's about recognizing them and show them appreciation for things being done. And if in this example, if I understood you correct, there would be 3 things, for example, that I should do or accomplish or work with. I mean, things are changing that fast as well. So I mean, only just saying 3 things that someone should work with, most likely before those 3 things are done, there might be things that have changed, that 2 of those things were done, still the correct ones, but it came a 4th one that were better suited to be done as number 3 instead. I think that could be a challenge as well, not just letting people away and run by themselves for too long, even if a marathon and you know that they will do it. Maybe you can be there with a glass of water after 30 kilometers just to see if it's going in the right direction and so on, and if they are still up for it. I think that's an important thing to see. Even if I know that they will do it, I will not then micromanage or after 30 kilometers say that, hey, maybe you should run a bit slower, a bit higher, etc. But just a question that, are you feeling good? Still okay? You get everything you need? That kind of servant leadership, I think that's well needed. And then the other perspective would be in the opposite, so to say. You should be there and say perhaps after 1 kilometer that, hey, you're running in the wrong direction. It's in that direction. Because finding that one out after 30 kilometers might be a hard thing for the ones, and they will drop everything. So I think that kind of finding the right balance between supporting and directing and coaching, that's the trick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you brought a really good perspective there. Like, and this comes back to spending time with people, right? Because if you check in with them often enough, then you're definitely going to see that they're going in the right direction and they're working on the things that you want them to work. But you're also going to see if they're not going in the right direction and point them in where you want them to go. And I guess my question was more geared towards like, if now we know that with every challenge, there are also opportunities, right? Yes. And it's more like what opportunities are out there right now. If we are able to see them and if we do the things we need to do, then we're going to be able to succeed or we'll be able to be, out there in the front in the future of work. So what do you see some opportunities right now in the current context?
Yeah. A lot of opportunities. Depends if we see it from a mankind, society perspective, individual perspective, business perspective. But what is a difference and will continue to be a difference compared to yesterday is the speed of things that needs to happen. The speed of changes, but the speed of implementation, the speed of continuous delivery, whatever those deliveries might be. I see still that as an opportunity. The challenge might be not to stress people from it, so to say, because there needs to be speed, there needs to be a continuous delivery and very tight and shortened feedback loop from ID to delivery. And instead of going from one direction to the other, there might be intermediate step that say, hey, we have good feedback coming from forth and back, but I would see it as almost a circle. It's like going around continuously. Every day the consumer/customer partner feel that they get greater value out of you. And I think that you can imagine those things being a leader between perhaps an employer-employee, that feedback, but it will be as well as individual, and specifically in my case, what can I offer developers? I will offer them, in that case, extremely good, friendly dialogue. But friendly means as well that I will tell them if they fall behind, and I will help them get back in forefront again. That's a couple of aspects. And I would say as well that you continuously need to grow yourself. Might be from the soft skills perspective or from the technical skills perspective, but it's still an opportunity, I would say. I mean, I don't even know the English translation now, but if you know Christer Olsson, I mean, it's about utveckla or avveckla. I mean, develop things or just like
die or
yes.
disintegrate, because
Yes.
this is actually, we know this to be one of the universal laws. If we look at trees, if we look at everything around us, the building you're in, the building I'm in, it's either under construction and is developed in the fresh form, and after that it starts disintegrating. Like the paint on the wall is starting to fall apart and fall down, but we don't see it with the naked eye, and it might take 10 years, but it's still now disintegrating. So we know that if we don't grow, we cannot expect things to stay the same. There is not such a thing as inertia. So I love when you say that there's an opportunity right now for us to embrace kind of new technology, for example, new way of doing things,
Yes.
faster, because we cannot just deny those. They will come anyway, whether we want it or not. 5G or whatever is next, it will be here or is already here. So
Yep.
I can see that you're talking from the perspective of the software process, because I know that's your core, right? You work with software flow. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, what do you see now being the future of software development?
Yes. I see the future as a need of keeping the traceability more tightly connected. Basically, in software development, there's perhaps a bit of buzzword out of it as well, but in many cases, at least, if not all cases, there's some kind of requirements or use cases that are asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's a user experience for sure. But many of us work in industries where there's still a tick in a box needed to have the sign up and have the delivery approved, etc., etc. And that is the flow/feedback loop I want to have as shortened as possible. And it's about then getting the traceability from the requirement and getting the perspective of what kind of business needs are there, architectural needs, process needs, technology needs. And if you have those things considered and being in place, I think that the technical challenges is not the hard thing. I mean, the good developers will find technical solutions,
Sure.
but they need the right prerequisites. And I think that's a thing that kind of I'm eager to help out with, to find those things, to discuss different concepts, to discuss different needs. And once those are sorted out, you can, in kind of an incremental way, build value in the flow, and in the end then to get the end customer the value they need. Because I mean, you and me, we're end consumers on many things. We don't care too much about some kind of a specification, but we know what we want, even if we're having hard times to express it sometimes. I think that's a thing I see, that many organizations, product organizations not the least, lack a bit of still. I mean, they're doing perfect, extremely good products, but trust me, we can do it in a more controlled and faster way.
Yeah, and predictable and repeatable.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. So tell us then a little bit about how you help organizations, like, and you and your team. What kind of projects do you work with, and how do you help them?
Yeah, sure. We try to address the need from the partner we have. looking at it from different angles. And that a bit what I was into, that as an example, some organizations, if not all, say, hey, continuous integration would be good to have. And we think we know that why we need it. And so we create some kind of continuous integration / DevOps teams to create something good. But not many people in management usually care too much about it, except that it needs to be in place, it should shorten feedback loops, etc. But there are so many other things that needs to be taken into consideration. Everything from like how the culture is actually doing in the company. What kind of culture do we need to change based on this one? What kind of business needs and business models do we actually support by implementing a pure continuous integration thinking and culture in the organization? What other means do we have? Do we need to consider the requirement management in the CI chain, for example? And if yes, and by the way, yes, we do, then we're there to help the partner to kind of know how we tie everything together. I think similarity goes to DevOps culture, etc. I mean, it sounds good, and it is good, by the way. But it's one thing to say that you will do it and put a DevOps team, but without the surrounding context and the surrounding things in place, like new ways of working, new competencies, new processes, etc. in place, I think it will, if not fall flat, it will be a hard time for the partner. So that's what we do. We kind of help them out from all perspectives, meaning that we do have the competence on management level, if you would say it like that, architectural level. We do have the developer competence. We know how and why you would like to have continuous deliveries, etc. So all those things tied together make software flow and what we're about.
Wow. So you're almost like working with organizational change in the area of software development.
Yes, you
Yeah,
could
because
say
you
like
have to go touch the culture, you have to go touch the way we do things and the processes and bring in expertise and competence. And that's almost like, what we do. Like, I work with the leadership part and kind of why the leaders need to develop in a certain way or in an area, and then you do more with the software team. So
Yep.
then tell us a bit about what do you see, maybe some, now in the context of what we're doing right now, what we're discussing, like what would you see then, some tips for someone if they're a manager on a software development organization and they're maybe skeptical to the kind of work you do, or what if you would sit with someone for the first time and say, hey, I heard about this thing with software flow and everything like that, like what would you say to them, like 1 or 2 tips that they can just take away already and implement at home, like at home, meaning in their home business, like
Yes.
in their business.
Yes. I would say that, keep it simple and try to nail it down to 2 things then. I have a tendency to create a lot of word. But anyhow, I mean, one thing would be to really understand the value chain and to know all possible handovers, because less handovers makes flow smoother. That would be one thing. So basically, as a manager, you might be line manager for a specific competence, a specific area, or whatever, but you should be aware of the complete value flow. So that would be one thing. The other thing would be actually to, and I know it sounds a bit, how do you say, too ideal or almost a utopia, but anyhow, I mean, broadening the competence to at least that level that you could, within your team or within your domain or within your competence, do yet one more thing tomorrow compared what you could do yesterday, as long as that is within the value chain or value flow, that would make a difference as well. So I mean, basically saying, ideal world would say every team could take on whatever challenge in the complete organization. That might be too hard, but you could create less dependencies. So except then handovers, you create less dependencies and you take more responsibility of what you're doing instead of saying, hey, by the way, I need someone else to do this as well. That might be the case the first time, but next time, maybe you should be able to do that. So if you could find that sweet spot where everyone feels comfortable and enjoy in developing themselves by one mean or another to just make a bit greater difference tomorrow compared to yesterday. That would be the second thought. Basically working with competence development continuously.
Right. And not necessarily going very deep in one area, maybe going a little bit broader. So that will also bring you a higher perspective. So you understand also your partners, even if you have dependency and deliverers, you can still understand them and why they need maybe some input or why they could do it, faster or not. And so you're talking about understanding the whole value chain, but also then broadening our perspective and competence feel a little bit more than what we're doing now.
Yes. Nice. And I mean, know your friends a little bit better, and perhaps if not know your enemies, but I mean, understand them. And then the second thing could be perhaps get to know them as well. So, I mean, it's all about creating value together. And you're, buzzwords again, you're not stronger than the weakest part of the chain, etc. But I mean, it is really true. So try to reach out, try to understand the different handovers and dependencies, and you will go from there. And that there's no one rule for all, but
no,
you will find out if you're curious enough and brave enough.
Yeah. And it comes back to communication, right? Like at the end of the day, if we don't speak to each other, even if we work, side by side, we're not gonna create what we need to create, like just waiting for the other person to maybe reply on email or in a system that we have. So this is so valuable. So tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward, this year and next year. Like, where are you? Is the team growing? Are you expanding? What's going on in your world there?
Yep. If we want to be brave, and we will continue to be brave enough to say to even partners that it sounds like you're not ready to bring on the challenge that you by yourself are addressing. So, and based on those dialogues and what I see that to help the partners in the best way, we would need to have that kind of competence and skill sets covering the full flow, more or less. There are for sure some specific needs of tools based on a concept defined that we that day perhaps will not have the competence. So I mean, if I would need to have all competence, both on the depth and width, in all aspects, talking about having hard time finding talents. I mean, I would have hard time doing that. But I would say from role/competence perspective, you need to have the product owner skill set or product management perspective, being able to carry on the business owner perspective. We do have good developers. We need even more. And it's more and more going towards or in the cloud environment. That's for sure. And not to forget about cybersecurity perspective, to implement things in a very secure way. And even the things we talked about with processes and way of working. I think that what we would need and what we're looking for as well is really skilled developer that are super keen on solving problems, but could not only technically implement things, but they can do it in a way that it becomes a process as well. Right. Basically saying that from now on, I don't believe in having the so-called process guys that are extremely good at processes and talking about them, documenting them, and you have good developers on the other side. That will be the same role more or less going forward, because good developers, they don't want to read process documents, things like that. So I think that if you're interested of solving problem and kind of a Boy Scout rule, leaving things better than you found them, and working according to software craftsmanship mindset, then those are the guys that I'm looking for, and those are the guys that will make the biggest impact on at partners as well.
Absolutely, and I can see how important that is, and you know, with the complexity of the software, like it is more and more complex, more and more, like everything around us, it's run by software, almost everything. Now we have things connected to the internet and you know, stuff like that, and everything it's you know, run by software. So I can see how having that kind of mind where you are able to document things and create kind of the blueprint for that piece of software that you develop. So if anyone is interested to learn about, you know, what opportunities do you have, I think we shared a link in the comments to check the career site and see if you want to join Tommy and his team. So thank you so much, Tommy, for being on the show. I have a couple of questions now for us to close. So one is a little bit more personal, and it go like this: like, what is the best leadership advice you ever got, and how did that help you?
It's a good question. I've been given some good advices during the year. Short side note. I got one advice once saying that it's better to take a quick decision that's partly right than taking no decision at all. And maybe if it's not the best advice, I liked it, because I do believe that you need to be complemented. Guys like that, or guys like me, needs to be complemented by good analytical people that will be fact-based, etc. And I like that. But those two personalities need to challenge each other. So I like that advice. The other advice I would say is still to be yourself. I think that it will show in the end anyhow, or if not right away. So I think that's a good advice that I got. I mean, be yourself. I think that was more or less in the beginning of my management career as such, taking on a new group and having that kind of responsibility for the first time without being acting, you know, someone would come back and take over again, etc. I think that really helped me out a lot, because they felt that right away.
Absolutely, that's so good, and it's also like no one can tell you that you're doing that wrong, right?
Exactly.
Being yourself.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Like last question: what does leadership for the now means to you? How would you define leadership in a sentence, a word, kind of? How would you boil it down to something like short?
Yeah. And short is the hard thing for me, you know that, Florin.
I know, that's why I'm challenging you, you know?
Yeah. And now I think try to be as clear as possible, and try to be, how do you say, adaptive to changes. So, I mean, don't make too many trade-offs. That will make you kind of vague in the end. And be steady, be firm, but be ready for a trade-off. I think that's one thing that's needed for leaders and leadership.
Absolutely. I love that. Clarity, adaptability, being firm, and I think knowing your non-negotiable, right? Because when you make a trade and you need to know what is non-negotiable, you
Yeah,
don't
and
have
that's
to
a good
kind
thing.
of, yeah, bend with the wind, right? That's
Yes.
not the kind of leader we need.
No.
Right on. Thank you so much for being on the show, Tommy. I hope we added some value to our viewers, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, Florin.
Absolutely. Pleasure is mine. So thank you so much for watching us today, and I look forward to come back to you next week on Wednesday with another wonderful guest. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.